This is episode 10 of the Gambling Still Sucks podcast. In this episode, we have our very first guest. Hey there, and welcome to the Gambling Still Sucks podcast. My name is Jamie. I'm a compulsive gambler, and I'm also the host of this show. The last time I gambled was July 15th of 2010. As I mentioned in the intro, this is our very first guest. And I just want to preface it and say, bear with us. This is my first time doing interviews, and so the recording system that we use, there's a little bit of popping and some clipping on some of the words. But at the end of it all, I think the message still really comes through. And I'm excited for you to hear Rob's story and to get to know a good friend of mine. So let's jump into the interview. Hey there, everyone. This is an episode I've been looking forward to. From the beginning, I think I said in one of the early episodes that I'd always planned to have guests on to share their stories, and today is that day. So I'm really looking forward to a chance to shut up and let someone else do most of the talking. And I'm especially excited because of who this first guest is. And this is a person that is actually one of the very first people, if not the first person, to know that this podcast might actually even exist and go from something that was in my head to something that was actually out in the world. And the guest today is a great friend of mine. We actually go to the same GA meeting. That's where we met, and we've developed a great friendship. And I think, as you can see, if anybody that's been to GA, you know that you look around the room and you're very similar to other people. But our guest today is sort of like looking in a mirror for me. And after hearing his story, you'll probably really get to know why. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my great friend, Rob, as the very first guest of the Gambling Still Sucks podcast. Rob, it's great to have you with us.
Hey, Jamie. Thanks. It's great to be here.
So, Rob, before we dive into your experiences with gambling and now recovery, I think it'd be great for our audience just to sort of paint a picture a little bit about who you are, maybe share a little bit about like your personal or professional life, just kind of, again, paint the picture so people can kind of have an idea of who you are.
Sure. Well, Jamie, my name's Rob. I am a compulsive gambler. And the last time I gambled was August 31st of 2015. And I am married and have 4 kids, 2 dogs, and I am a professional and have been in the same industry for over 20 years now. And, just for the last 2.5 years of not gambling, my life has definitely changed.
Yeah, and I can vouch for Rob and say that Rob is the typical guy. I think I said in one of the most recent episodes that it's hard for people to really kind of get the numbers of who are compulsive gamblers. We have that 5% in our head, but Rob is a typical guy. I think he and I, part of that's why we're so alike. We like sports, and we're both in business, so we have so many things in common. But Rob, I guess we might as well start in the beginning, right? So I guess take us back. Earliest memories, thoughts, experiences when it comes to gambling.
All right. Well, my earliest gambling memories are actually when I was about 10 years old, and my dad was a bookie, and actually had me help him and taught me the football parlay sheets, and that was kind of my first experience with gambling. And he would let me, pick as many parlay sheets as I want, and put $1 or $2 on each one, and if I happened to win, he would give me that money. And that was kind of my very first experience with gambling. And my dad passed away when I was 14, and so at that point I had 4 years under my belt of some pretty extensive gambling from 10 to 14, believe it or not. And when I was 14 years old, I started playing poker. I was introduced to poker through my family, who liked to sit around and kind of play poker for fun. And I would sit on, my mom's lap or my uncle's lap or whoever it was, and they would teach me how to read the hands and what beat what. And that was kind of my very first experience with poker. And moving forward, by the time I was 16, I was playing pretty high stakes poker at that point, at least high stakes for a 16-year-old. And that's when the illness really kicked into gear, and I started to realize that I could win substantial amounts of money playing poker. And I guess what I didn't factor in was the substantial amount of money that I lost playing poker. So that's kind of my early memories of how I kind of got started gambling.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like you say, you're playing high stakes poker. What age?
16. I mean, it wasn't uncommon to, win or lose $500 to $1,000, in a session at 16 years old. I mean, that's pretty high stakes for mid teenagers.
Yeah, I definitely say so. And so these are obviously, I mean, at 16, you're not at a casino. These are kind of like home games and with family or friends, correct? Right.
Yeah. These are home games that actually started in my mom's basement. There was 4 or 5 of us, and we were all went to school together. And actually, interestingly enough, that same group kept that game going all the way up until, well, it's still going, but I stopped going 2.5 years ago. But we played yearly, for 30 plus years. So, that was a group that I grew up playing cards with, and we met once a year to play in this big game, regardless of anybody's schedule or family or whatever. We all picked a time, and we did that every single year. And that game still goes on to this day. I just don't attend anymore.
Wow. And I guess in addition to poker, were you doing other types of gambling? Was it just strictly poker? Or I guess, what was the progression? So you start off, I mean, you're doing like you say, you took over your bookie business kind of early on, then you're into high stakes poker. I guess, where does gambling lead you? I guess, what's your path after that?
Well, poker was definitely my main, the main thing that I played. But I had a period where I was betting on football games. I've done the lottery, pretty much anything that you can gamble on, I gambled on. But I always went back to poker. And interestingly, poker is the type of gambling that I'm compulsive at. So, for example, I could buy one lottery ticket and lose and throw it away and not think about it anymore. Or I could bet on a football game and win or lose $100 and, that was the end of it. But for some reason with poker, I just couldn't quit. And whenever I would win, I would raise the stakes and raise the stakes until I finally ended up actually playing in the World Series of Poker. And that was kind of a big step for me. But that's where things really, really got dangerous for me, because then I went from, hundreds and small thousands to, big dollar amounts that I was winning and losing. So, that's when things got out of control, especially with the advent of online poker. That was that made things so easy to sit down and just dump money. And that's kind of what I did.
Yeah. So, and from the sounds of it, it sounds like we were kind of in the same time period here. I mean, when was the first year, or what was the first year that you were at the World Series of Poker?
Let's see, that would have been 2013, I think, 12 or 13.
Okay. And so you're probably playing online poker well before that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you and I both know well that it was
playing,
early 2000s.
Yeah, I was playing online poker back when party poker was really big. And, it was so easy to just click a button and add 100, add 100, add 100, add 100. And it got so out of control that I actually, since I didn't want my now ex-wife to know how much I was gambling. So I had a friend who I would give him the cash, and I would use his bank account to fund my online gambling. And it got to the point where I was using his account without giving him the money. And it just, I was stealing from him. It was terrible. It's just such a vicious disease that you don't think about who you're hurting and what you're doing when you're in the midst of it.
Yeah, and I think you come across something there. The hiding it, right? And you said your ex-wife. You're hiding it from her by using a third party to kind of run the money through. And I think obviously that's something we all experience, is that hiding. Was it just the guilt, the shame? At that point, do you feel like you know that you have a big problem, or what's your thought process? Why are you hiding it? Do you think someday it's not going to be an issue, or?
Well, I definitely knew that I had a problem. Everybody knew that I had a problem, and I had been advised by many people, including my mother, my ex-wife, several friends, to go to GA and get some help, because they saw this spiral out of control, and it was turning into, not hundreds, but thousands of dollars. And, the worst part is I've always made a pretty good living. So it wasn't even an issue to continue to dump money into it. And it was just so sickening. So I hid it from everybody, somewhat because of the embarrassment, somewhat because I didn't want people to know how much money I was actually losing. I was trying to keep that persona of, big time, high stakes gambler and great card player and whatever, when really in the background, I was just losing money and just driving my entire family into the ground. So, I definitely knew that I needed help, but I didn't at the time want help. I didn't want to stop gambling. I knew I was kind of destroying everything, but I didn't want to stop. So I knew if I did GA, I wouldn't get anything out of it, because I wasn't ready to stop. And, I think it's until you hit rock bottom that you actually realize that you need to stop.
Yeah, and I think you said the devastation kind of not just the money issues. I guess, could you talk a little bit more about what effects has gambling had on your personal life or on your professional life?
Well, the thing about especially being a compulsive gambler and hiding it is you lie and you cheat and you steal and you kind of do anything that you can to get the money to gamble. And I almost can see how drug addiction is. I've never drank or done drugs or anything like that, but I can definitely understand how that addiction affects you. It's like you just want the next fix or the next round of cards or the next opportunity to go play. And while you're doing that, you're lying, cheating, stealing, whatever it takes, and then that starts to affect other aspects of your life. You lie to your spouse, you lie to your employer, just kind of everything. You ignore your kids when you should be, doing something with them. Instead, you're sleeping on the couch because you played poker till 4 a.m. or whatever it might be. So these things all affect your family. It goes way deeper than just the money that you lose. And, that's where I saw myself becoming a person that I didn't want to be. I was always a good person growing up and tried to always do the right thing. And, when gambling got a grip on me, it turned me into somebody that I didn't want to be. And until I recognized that, I just kept steamrolling everybody to get what I wanted. But once I recognized that, GA coupled with some personal therapy from a professional has really, really helped not only the gambling, but it's really changed my entire, home life.
Sure. And I guess one last thing, as we're kind of talking about the past, any type of story or two that you look back now and you just kind of look and you just shake your head and you say, was that really me? Because I think we all have those. I know I have plenty of those experiences where I look back and the story, it's almost like an out of body. You can't even believe it's you. Do you have story or two like that?
Oh, I have a lot of stories like that. But
A story or two, I guess, that you'd like to share.
yeah, I mean, a couple in particular that are just so unbelievable are, when I went to the casinos, I always wanted to drive myself because I didn't want to be subject to, whenever everybody else wanted to leave. So if I was going with anybody, I would always follow them and drive separately. And so one time we actually had I won an award at work, and they took the top 10% of producers to a casino on a bus. And we were leaving at like 8 in the morning and we were coming home at like 5 p.m. Well, I knew that wasn't going to work for me. So one of my friends drove up separately from the bus and I rode the bus up. And then the plan was I wasn't going to ride the bus home. I was going to ride home with my friend who was like me and would stay as long as I wanted to stay. So fast forward, 5 o'clock rolls around, the bus leaves. I'm supposed to meet my friend at 7 o'clock for dinner. I, of course, don't show up because, I was playing poker, of course, and I didn't want to stop to eat. So, hours go by and midnight rolls around and I finally start kind of looking to touch base with my friend and he's nowhere to be found. And I'm calling him and trying to find him. And well, finally about 3 in the morning, I get a hold of him and he had already left to go home. And, we're 2 hours away at a casino. He had already left to go home. So he couldn't find me, couldn't get a hold of me because he was at a different part of the casino. And so I'm stuck there, no ride, no ride home, 2 hours away. And instead of, worrying about how I was going to get home, I went and sat back down at the poker table and I played through the next day, missed work. And it wasn't until the following night that I actually started to worry about how was I going to get home. So that was kind of a sickness that I look back now and I go, how do you stay at a casino for basically, almost 2 straight days, miss work, don't go home, so that was one story that was just, that's one I look back on. And then, we've all had those times where we've run money up to, a gigantic amount and then sit there and lose it all back and then some. And I have, dozens and dozens of stories like that. So those are my 2 big ones. I mean, I was known for, I was an action player and I was known for, bringing action to the table. So people liked to play with me and I would have giant stacks of chips in front of me. And then I would just continue to play that way. And almost every time I would lose it all back and then whatever was in my pocket and then whatever was in my bank account. So that's how sick I was.
And that's why it's like looking in a mirror. Pretty much identical in that situation. So, and I don't think I've ever actually heard the bus story or the trip after work. So that was kind of cool. I like hearing that. It's obviously shows the depths that we go to and the links that we go to just continue to stay in the action. So let's fast forward. What happens? I mean, here is August 2015, and I mean everything that's led up to it. I mean, at this point, you've gambled most of your life. So what happens? What happens in 2015 that all of a sudden you end up changing or going to a GA meeting? What leads you to this point?
Well, this is the part that's the toughest for me to talk about. And if you remember my first GA meeting, I was a complete disaster, as we've talked about many times. But I had some other things going on in my life at the time. In my marriage, some things that I'm not proud of that all stem from not only the gambling addiction, but just some things that weren't right in my head. And finally it just all came to a head, and it was a combination of some things at home, my wife discovering some credit card statements that had online poker transactions on them, which she knew I was playing, but she had no idea the amount of money that I was spending and the time that I was spending on it. So all of it kind of came to a head, and actually was we kind of split for about 6 weeks, and I ended up moving out for that period of time. And when I moved out, my wife wouldn't talk to me because of a lot of things that had come to pass. And I knew at that time that I either needed to get help, or I was just gonna be a lonely old man with a history of gambling and addiction. So I decided at that point that I was going to finally get help, and I wasn't going to gamble anymore. And I had tried on my own a lot, and it never, obviously never worked. So I decided to go to GA and went to that first meeting. And, by the time I left that meeting, I knew that I needed to be there. But I had some other issues that I had to take care of too, aside from gambling, but I guess it's all related. So I went and saw a therapist, and we started doing some weekly therapy and things like that. And I discovered a lot of things about myself and about my childhood and about my parents, and a lot of things that have been kind of bottled up that created this compulsive behavior of mine. So went through a lot of therapy, went through, GA, and it really changed me. And, the not gambling part was great, but it changed my outlook on life. It changed my outlook on my wife, my family. It made me realize kind of the things that I was doing was hurting other people, and I didn't want to hurt other people. That's not me. I don't like to hurt people, and yet that's what I've kind of done my whole life indirectly by gambling. So, fast forward, it's 2.5 years later. I think I've missed two or three GA meetings, and they were all because I was on vacation with my family. I go every single week. My wife and I have a great relationship now. We talk. I don't lie anymore. I lied a lot to my wife, and I'm not proud of that. And that was part of kind of the sickness of gambling and these other issues. But I just tell the truth now, and I have money now because I'm not gambling it away, and we're able to do a lot of things that we want to do, and I don't have that stress over my head of her seeing accounts, or wondering if I'm gambling, or having to hide things or make up stories or whatever it might be, because I just tell the truth. And not that we don't ever argue or fight like anybody else, but it's different now, because it's not about lies and about things that shouldn't be happening in the family setting. So anyways, life is good now, and if you're listening to this, I can tell you that I never thought that I would ever stop gambling. I never wanted to stop gambling. I just never thought that I would ever, not gamble anymore. And here I am. It's been 2.5 years. I don't watch poker. I don't check on the World Series. I don't play. I just have no, desire to go back to gambling, because I remember how it was and how I felt and how it made my family felt. And I just never want to go back to that again. So, am I clean? Yeah, I'm clean for now, but I also know that I'm, 1 day away, or 1 hour away, or one whatever away from possibly going back to gambling. So, that's why I still go to the meetings, and I have a great support system at home with my wife has supported me through all this, and I mean it's just I have a completely different life than I had 2.5 years ago, and it's great.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think when people, the one question I see more often than not, and I hear whether it's at a GA meeting or online, is the question, how do I quit gambling? And I think if anybody, I mean, if you have that question in your mind, I think rewind it back, whatever it was, 2 or 3 minutes to the beginning of that. And Rob just outlined the action steps. I mean, everything he said are there things that I've done or I know other people that have done. And it really is sort of the path to recovery. And like you said, I mean, and I can vouch, if you've missed 2 meetings, I don't think there's a single one more than that. And it's all about taking the actions. All right. So then thanks for sharing that. And then the other thing I just really wanted you to touch on is just, I know when people quit gambling, and you touched on this a little bit, it's not just the financial situation that improves, but just so many other areas of your life. And so I know you touched on a few of those already, but are there any other things you want to share, like improvements or achievements that you're really proud of over the last 2.5 years that you just never thought would happen?
I mean, definitely my my work has gotten better. It was not uncommon for me to play cards all night and go straight to work from the casino or from whatever home game I might be playing in, and then just try to get through the day and then go home and sleep and do it all over again. And since I stopped gambling, I can definitely focus a lot more on my work. I don't play online poker at work anymore like I used to. So definitely my career is much better now. And then of course, like I said before, my family life and my relationship with my wife is a lot better. And it's just because it all boils down to honesty. And when you're gambling and you're a compulsive gambler, let's just all be frank, you're not honest. You're not honest, and when you're not honest, that creates problems everywhere. So, those are my 2 big, I guess, takeaways from my recovery, and I continue to work on those things every day.
And Rob, you're being modest, and you're leaving one big one out, which I thought you might go to, and I sort of set you up for. But talk a little bit about your health changes.
Oh, so yeah, I mean, that was another. That's definitely another area that has improved. And when I was playing cards as much as I was, there was times when I would go sometimes, I mean, several meals in a row without eating. And when I did eat, it was on the run and it was junk. And my sleep was horrible, of course, because I was not getting enough sleep. And I actually, at one point, got up to about 320 pounds and, was very unhealthy and just didn't like that either. And you don't really accustom that to gambling, but for me it was, because all I did is sit around. I sat around, played cards, and ate, and that's pretty much what I did. So, once I stopped gambling, I had to kind of fill in that void with something else to do, and so I started working out, and my wife has kind of helped me put a meal plan together, and I started doing some boot camps 3-4 times a week, which has really helped. And I'm getting back in shape. I'm 45 now, so I'm getting on the upper end of the mountain, so to speak. So I'm really trying to get as healthy as I can, and I have lost a lot of weight, and I feel a lot healthier, and I eat better, and that all makes me happier, which in turn makes my wife and family happier. So.
Yeah, and Rob's being very modest. I see pictures every now and then, I mean, from when he first joined, and you are quite skinny. It doesn't even look like the same person. And I think there's a difference in just your appearance and like even just your glowing kind of happiness just on day-to-day things.
Well, I appreciate that. And I definitely from day one, because I was definitely not glowing day one. So.
All right, and then Rob, you are the unlucky first person in that you will not get to know ahead of time what the 5 takeaway questions are. And that's I've prepared sort of 5 questions that I'm going to ask every guest just to get a feel for what their take is on it. And so yours are going to be completely in the dark and everybody else is going to have a little bit of a head start, but I think you'll do great.
I'm ready.
All right, so with this being Problem Gambling Awareness Month, and this is being recorded in March, I guess, what do you wish the general population knew about compulsive gambling or compulsive gamblers?
I think the biggest thing that people don't realize is that it is an addiction and it is an illness. And so many compulsive gamblers don't want to be compulsive gamblers, but they just don't know how to stop. So, if any of you are smokers or drinkers or whatever it is, and you ask a compulsive gambler the question, well, why don't you just stop? It's the same as me asking you, well, why don't you just quit smoking? Or why don't you just quit drinking? So there's definitely an addiction there. And, I think a lot of people don't realize that compulsive gambling is an addiction.
Yeah. And then along those lines, I guess, what would you like to see change in order to get more people that are struggling? Because, you and I both know we struggled for years and years, and there are tons of other people that are struggling and struggling. What do you think needs to change in order to allow more people to get the help that they need?
Well, you're always going to have that stigma out there about compulsive gambling, and people just don't know where to go. If you're an alcoholic, people know to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're addicted to drugs, people know kind of where to go for help with that. Most people who are compulsive gamblers, they've heard of GA, but they really don't know how to go about getting help from GA or where their meetings are or whatever. So, I'd love to see some more funding from, state or feds to get the word out and, let people know where to go for help. And that's why I think this is great that you're doing this, because I think this is going to help people know kind of where to go.
Yeah, and I guess I'm in full agreement, or full agreement in that the state and federal funding. The federal funding, if they add $10 to the budget, it will be $10 more than is currently there. So that would be a nice addition. Maybe we could even get $100 and move it a little forward. And also, if you're listening to this and you don't know where to go, if you're here in the United States, one number you can call is 1-800-522-4700. Again, that's 1-800-522-4700. And that goes for whether you're a compulsive gambler or you have a friend or family member that is. That's the national hotline from the NCPG. And so they will get you routed to your state. And also Gamblers Anonymous, gamblersanonymous.org would be another great resource. And then moving along, I guess the third question for you, Rob, having been through what you've been through and knowing that there's someone listening and struggling just like you were in 2015, what can you say to provide them with encouragement or hope?
Well, I can definitely tell you that things get better. And sometimes when you're at your rock bottom, it's hard to fathom that things could possibly get better, especially when you're in debt and you're fighting with family members or whatever your situation might be. But I can tell you that there is help, and when you seek that help, things do get better. So I encourage anybody listening who has a gambling problem to seek help and just give it a try. Even if you've tried it before and it didn't work, really give it a try again. And, I can promise you that it does get better.
All right. And then the fourth question I have for you, Rob, is just what's it been like to share your story? In a GA meeting or like here, or obviously you said with some family members and maybe some friends. What's it been like? What's your experience? What's your feedback from other people been?
Well, in the beginning, I hated sharing my story because I was embarrassed. I didn't even want anybody to know that I was in GA. And when people would ask me, to go to the casino or play cards or, do this or that, I always would make up a story to, as to why I couldn't. And it's only been recently, probably over the past 6 months, that I actually just tell people I don't gamble anymore. I'm in Gamblers Anonymous. And, I always get full support from anybody that I tell that to, which I'm kind of surprised. But it happens a lot because, when you gamble as much as I did, there's a lot of people that I know that gamble. And whenever I run into them, they'll ask me, even sometimes when my wife's with me, they'll go, "Hey, we're in a poker game," or, how's the game, or whatever it might be. And I just tell them I don't gamble anymore. And it really is fulfilling for me because it really shows how far I've come. And for me, it's an accomplishment 'cause I really never thought I'd get that far.
Yeah, and that support is huge. I know that support has helped me throughout, and I know, like you said, the support when you get that feedback, that positive feedback, especially we don't expect it, and we expect the worst, people to look down upon us or to shy away from us. But I've found really when I tell people, it tends to kind of strengthen the relationship. And so then finally, the last question for you in the last 5 takeaways is, Rob, what does the future look like for you?
Well, I don't know.
Wide open.
Right now, I'm trying to continue to build my business. Continuing to work on my marriage and my relationship with my wife. I'm getting ready to send some kids to college here that are finishing up high school in the next couple of years, and really just kind of start heading towards my, I hate to say retirement years, but
you're not anywhere near retirement.
Just trying to enjoy myself and really just try to help other people who are going through the same thing that I was. And, just like people helped me when I first came in the program, I want to help other people now. And, if I can change one life, one person, one family dynamic by getting them help to not gamble anymore, then for me, it's all worth it.
Absolutely. Well, Rob, I just want to say thank you. This has been extremely powerful stuff. And I just, first of all, can't thank you enough for your friendship and your support. I know I'd be really, really bummed if I showed up at Monday night meeting and looked around the table and didn't see your face. So I appreciate your support and your friendship.
I appreciate yours too, Jamie. And thanks for welcoming me on that first night. And, I appreciate your friendship as well.
And then I guess finally, just thanks for being the first guest on the show, the guinea pig. I mean, I appreciate your openness and sharing your story. I think the more stories that we get out into the world, the better. So thank you for that. And thank you. I know my interview skills will get better. This is the first time I've ever done this. So I know this is probably the first time you've ever come on and talked about your stuff in this setting. So we're all rookies. We're all going to get better at it. But I appreciate you. And also to you, the audience, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoy this. I know this has been one of those things that people have been asking about. Hey, I'd love to have people on. Hey, I'd love to hear other people's story. And we're going to continue to do this. So if you have a story you'd like to share and you want to come on, hit me up. Let me know. Shoot me an email, shoot me a message on the website, and we will get you set up and we will record it. And you can follow in Rob's big footsteps Rob, you did a great job. You're going to be a tough act to follow, but I'm looking forward to hearing additional stories and also looking forward to hearing everybody's feedback on your story.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate it.
All right. And that wraps up this episode, the very first interview, and I look forward to seeing you in future episodes. Now, before you go, I'd like to go over a few very important things. First of all, I think it's important to remember that problem gambling is a treatable disorder. There's no scientific evidence or study that suggests that this is just a terminal condition and that we're going to be forced to deal with the negative side effects and results of our actions for the rest of our lives. And so while I know that in the moment it feels like this is something that you're going to be struggling with for the rest of your life, science just doesn't back that up. Recovery is real, but we just need to seek out treatment. And so that brings me to point number 2, which is that help is available. Many of the states here in the United States actually offer free counseling and therapy for not only gamblers, but family members as well. And so you just need to know that these programs are available. And the best way to start finding out more information is to call the hotline number. And that's 1-800 1-800-522-4700. Again, that's 1-800-522-4700. And this is the number run by the National Council on Problem Gambling. And so it covers all 50 states, and they're going to have information and be able to start to guide you on the path to seek out help in the area where you live. And these hotlines aren't just available here in the United States. They're available around the world. So just simply open up a web browser, type in gambling help, gambling hotline, and you'll be able to find the information for your local area. In addition to the hotlines, there are numerous places where you can find gambling support and information online. If you go to gamblingstillsucks.com/help, I'll list some of these things, and I'll continue to add to this as I find new resources, whether they're chat groups or online forums or just great information. So again, that was gamblingstillsucks.com/help. As a disclaimer, this podcast does not provide legal or medical advice. Look, I'm not a doctor, a therapist, or an attorney. I'm just a guy who had a gambling problem. So while we'll discuss a lot of topics and I'll provide a lot of insight into what's worked for me, please seek out the help of a professional. Go visit a lawyer, a doctor, or a therapist to help you deal with your gambling problem. The information that we discuss is for informational purposes and should not be taken as professional legal or medical advice. And reliance on the information appearing on the podcast is solely at your own risk. The music for this podcast is Something Elated by Broke for Free and licensed under the Creative Commons.